Today, we will dive deep into how the physical intimacy and touch patterns we experienced growing up shape our current relationships and parenting. We will explore how physical touch and connection were modeled in our childhood homes. Parents, if you've ever wondered how your own experiences with physical intimacy might be influencing your children's understanding of connection, relationships, and love, this episode is for you. As we chase godlike sexuality in our homes, we can allow physical intimacy to be the initial teacher of sex as a pathway to deep and intimate connection. We'll be sharing our own personal stories, insights, and reflective questions that will help you become more intentional about creating a healthy culture of touch in your own family. We'll discuss everything from how children learn about physical connection, the role of parents in modeling healthy touch, and how our own family backgrounds impact our current relationships. We hope this episode will help deepen your family's understanding of the physical aspect of emotional connections and relationships. Welcome to Fostering Godlike Sexuality at Home. Our goal here is to empower parents to teach their children to see sex in a godlike way.
My name is Brigham Elton. I'm a pornography and sexual addiction counselor who've helped thousands of people overcome even the appeal of pornography. And I'm hoping to get out in front of this and try to help parents to set up their homes to chase godlike sexuality from the beginning.
My name's Andrea, a mother of 4, and I'm learning alongside all you listeners and excited to have these discussions. Thanks for joining us.
Today I want to talk a little bit about teaching about sex as a connector. And I think the primary way that our kids are learning about sex and physical intimacy as a connector is by physical intimacy, right? And the way that we choose to use touch in our home.
Yeah, they're experiencing it and seeing it modeled.
Totally.
As the teacher, yeah.
Yeah, and even when they see it modeled in media, it's primarily touch, physical intimacy that they're seeing modeling connection and relationship more than it actually is sex that they're seeing in media.
Yeah.
Right? And so even, it's not only from us as parents, but also they're seeing it in their neighborhood, in maybe in their church, plus in their media. Physical intimacy is the primary teacher of sex as a connector.
Yeah, I love that. And I think this is such an important tool that you utilize really well with your clients in building a better understanding of God's perspective of sex and the godly attributes that sex brings into a relationship.
Which also, we're not just chasing godlike sex, we're chasing godlike physical intimacy.
Yeah, that's part of it, that leads to it, that it's an important aspect to it.
Exactly. Now, because it's one of our primary place we're learning, we're all affected by our own culture, right? When I think back of my home of origin and me growing up for 18 years in this home, right? The way that my parents was a primary version treating physical intimacy really shaped my perspective of physical intimacy.
Yeah.
Right. And today, that's really our hope for our listeners is that they will evaluate what is my culture, right? And what culture did I come from and how is it shaping me now and today?
Yeah. And then from there, what is that doing to influence my kids? What is the culture now my kids are experiencing? And that awareness is powerful in connecting us with our partners a little bit more and preparing us to speak about and advocate for what we really want, physical intimacy, what kind of role we want that to play in our child's understanding of sex.
Totally. This is we're going to kind of demonstrate and go through just between the two of us. But this is a conversation that I'm hoping that parents choose to have together.
Yeah.
I hope people choose to have a conversation like this with your spouse. In fact, we'll have on here a list of questions that you can download and go through okay, let's talk about these questions together. Let's have some long drive or let's hang out at night and let's talk through some of these questions, even if you think you know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because our perception of our homes of origin are actually changing over time too.
True.
And it's what you think is real in your head. And so that's what matters. Actually what your parents did, it doesn't really matter. What you think is happening is what really matters.
Yeah.
So we're going to hit some of these questions and let's just answer them back and forth so that a parent can start to think about what was their culture of origin.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
I'm going to ask you first. In your home, right? What do you remember about your parents' physical intimacy with each other?
I would say the main thing that comes to my mind is that they had kind of some patterns, right, that showed up. Like their physical intimacy had some predictability to it. When my parents would leave for work, when they like would pray together, when they would like when my dad would come home from work and like greet my mom, even like their physical intimacy with us as kids had some patterns. Like my dad's was very playful. My mom's was very like caring and nurturing.
Interesting.
And so like pattern, that word kind of sticks out to me.
Yeah, and was it the same type of touch constantly, or like what type of touch was part of those patterns? Like whether it was prayer or return or
there was
departure?
hand holding, there was kissing, there was hugging, there was like just arm around you, sort of I'm here with you, I'm side by side with you.
Totally. How often do you think you were noticing that as like a young girl? Like how often do you think you noticed that they were touching?
Probably daily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And you're noticing it daily, let alone it happening.
Yeah, I think so.
And do you think that increased or decreased as you became a teen?
I think it meant more. Like it started to, I started to like think about it consciously more as a teen, right? Like I would notice it as a kid, but then as a teen, it was like, oh, they do that every day after they pray. They like turn to each other and give each other a kiss. Oh, just things like that.
Yeah. And like, obviously, like you're being taught about what that means, right? And then you're starting to feel in your own body what that means as a teenager.
Yeah.
And that really is transfer.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
awesome.
How about you? What do you remember?
I do not remember my parents being very physically intimate at all. Now, my parents got divorced too. And so like for me, that becomes like a little centric thing where like I'm a little sensitive to that, honestly.
Yeah.
Like if like physical intimacy doesn't exist for a little bit in my partnership, I get a little bit of red flag. But like what I do remember is my dad sometimes would like be in this like playful, jovial mood. And that's when I remember my parents being physically intimate.
Okay.
You know? And so like, and it felt really dad saw. Like he was the one who was initiating it. Like it felt sometimes like my mom would give it to him. Does that make sense?
But they weren't like participating together.
Yeah, it didn't
so
seem
much.
equally like wanted. It seemed like it was like another thing on my mom's list a little.
Like an obligation maybe.
Yeah. And honestly, like looking back now as an adult, like I don't know how true that really was, but like that was my perception and still a little bit is my perception.
Yeah.
You know? That like it was this like male sought, female given.
And that it was like dependent on a mood.
Totally. Right. And then I can remember one time my parents were driving, and I think like the reason I think it was only once is because it really does stick in my head. Like we were on this like 5-hour drive, and I noticed that my parents like reached out and held hands during it. And I was like, what? Like we were watching a show, and then like they were having a convo, and all of a sudden I watched my dad reach out, my mom reach out, and they were holding hands. And I was just like, what went on up there? You know, just because I thought that was odd. You know? And so like in my head, it was like a rare, like what's going on moment. Thing. Like it made my brain go like, what? You know, it like threw me off of my, not like, unlike you who are patterns.
Yeah.
For me, it was like, what is going on?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So like when you think about that, I mean, you kind of talked a little bit about why you think they kissed. Right? Would you say that was kind of transferred to like kissing specifically, or is there something else you'd add to that?
And honestly, because of my perception of why they kissed, I kind of got to this belief of like, as a teenagers you kiss because it's like new and whatever, but eventually it just becomes old and it doesn't really matter anymore.
Oh, okay.
And so like to me, like they had grown past kissing. Like it wasn't that like they didn't like each other in my head. In my head, it was like, oh, like eventually it's not new anymore. And so it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And so like, that's kind of my why they kissed, you know? What about you?
I would say that like, again, when I think back on like that pattern that stands out in my mind, the like predictability of it, it felt like it was a very like caring, loving expression, but it didn't feel like it really had like a lot of spontaneity or like passion or like, you know, that kind of spark or fire. It was kind of just this like consistent drip, which I think has a lot of awesome things. But I also didn't really get this like, oh, kissing happens because there's like something unique, a moment that's different. Yeah. So like they were killing it on the pattern. Yeah. But just like the moments was like a little bit like, Yeah. Okay, cool. And then what was their balance of public and private with physical intimacy? Like what was holding each other public? Was like making out public? Like what was public or private for your parents? Making out wasn't public, but like repeated kisses were. Okay. So I'd say like that would be like the like as far as it went would be like more than just like a one quick peck would be like a few.
Yeah.
And then like a hug and then.
And was
done.
there any touch you remember like having sexual energy? Like sometimes like maybe a little butt tap or like
No.
like a little like, I don't know, dance together or anything like that
No.
felt like it had that.
No, nothing really
passion
with like
energy.
that energy that was different.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
I do remember one time having this like sexual energy touch where I was like, oh, that was different. You know, and I didn't really notice it until I was a teenager, like the energy was different,
Yeah.
you know, but I remember one of these like jovials that was really going on and there was like a kiss. And after he left, my dad like tapped my mom's butt and I was like, what?
What does that mean?
And honestly, my brain went, he's still attracted to that. Like, I thought that was just a teenager thing. Like, I just went like, oh, like you have this honeymoon phase. And then after that, you're just like, whatever, you know? And like, I was like, oh, what? Like, I didn't know my dad liked my mom like that, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the first time I saw it was kind of new. Right.
Yeah.
And my dad did a really good job of like speaking to having those type of desires and that they're good.
Mm-hmm.
There was less acting, you know, and who knows what's going on in their relationship
Right.
at that time. But like, I remember going like, whoa, that was interesting to me that like, that was even a little bit public. Now, my dad, it was this public like woohoo. And my mom, it felt like saw me notice and like went like small and got embarrassed about it. Right. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, your dad's into me. It was more of this like, oh, I'm sorry. You had to see that, you know?
Yeah.
And so like, again, that kind of built this like dad wants it, mom gives it mindset that I think I left my home with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do think like now that as you were speaking, something else that came to my mind was like, there would be occasions when like we would sit down as a family either to watch a movie or play a game or like just relax from the day. And I do feel like there was a little bit of an energy shift there, like where my mom would like sit and just kind of like relax and she would sit close to my dad and she would like something in her energy would just shift a little bit to rather than like this pattern routine, hi, bye, love you, see you later sort of thing. It was kind of this like, oh, it's so good to be with you. Right now.
And that be with you has different energy than like, hey, I love you just as a reminder.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I like that.
That's cool.
How often do you remember them using like affectionate touch? So there was the patterns, right?
There was
so
the
that's
patterns.
like multiple times a day.
Yeah. And then I remember especially my dad when he would want to communicate with my mom about like, what do you need from me right now? Like what's going on? Like how can I be helpful? Like there would be more affectionate touch, like a hand on the back and like or like verbally, like, hey dear, what do you need from me right now? Like there would be a little bit more affection in those moments of like trying to be supportive.
Totally. And then did that transfer, like what about with kids? Like how often was like that transfer from your dad to you and your siblings?
I'd say pretty
Similarly?
regularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it similarly like I want to support you? Was like touch a symbol of support?
I think that with my dad, probably touch was more playful in nature typically. And then like if he wanted to play that supportive role, it kind of started out playful and then would like move to like, hey, yeah, it's okay. Like, let's talk about this or tell me what's going on, you know, with your dance group or whatever, you know. And then maybe it would be like, I would be sitting close to him or like have my head on his shoulder or I remember like as a little kid, like loving to just like sit on his lap and talk to him, you know, but usually that happened after like a playful connection moment with physical touch.
Yeah, okay. Honestly, like when I think about my parents and like their patterns of physical touch, again, it was really rare. But then like when I think about them towards us as siblings, you know, like I think I remember witnessing it more than anything.
Okay.
You know,
then like experiencing it or
like,
witnessing
I don't really
it with
remember. I don't know. It really centers around my dad to me. But like, because touch was a thing for him. Like it was more of a thing for my dad than my mom in my head, you know? And like, I really remember him being like a touch speaker of I'm here for you affection with my sister, who's like just is the next kid younger than me.
Okay.
Right. But there's a 3-year gap. But like, I really remember him like supporting her via touch.
Yeah.
You know? And like that touch was like, I'm freaking here for you, you know?
That it meant something.
Yeah. And then I don't know. Like I always remember my dad's hands, partially because he's cut off his fingers. And so he like, doesn't have like all the knuckles and fingernails on his hands, you know? And I do remember him like using his hands to speak his love. You know, whether that was like a hand on the shoulder or like even like in football, like a pat on the pads, it was pretty hard, or a smack on the head of the helmet. But it was like, I remember him using his hands to express joy with like kind of the jovial, you know, and then also like, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
You know, and like those meant so much. Like it's crazy. Like this happens with all humans, I think. Like when you get touched, like there's almost residue of that touch and it like kind of vibrates away.
Yeah.
You know? And like, I think that was especially true when like my dad chose to like express affection via touch, you know? And like that really lasted.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things as you were speaking that came to my mind is just like having had this conversation before with my husband, his experience with his parents was a little bit different because he had, his dad was sick and had like a lot of pain physically.
Okay.
And so like physical touch with his dad just didn't happen. Like what he remembers about it was like it not happening and that it was actually kind of dangerous. Like, oh, don't touch dad. Like it hurts.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely this lack, right? This feeling and this sense of lack of physical connection in that relationship. And I think that really mattered to him. And I think as he's gotten older, he looks back and realizes how much that mattered, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I think like you get it, like there's some level of get it as a kid, you know, but it still influences your patterns.
Totally. And like, it's interesting as we're all talking we're talking about dads here.
Yeah.
And again, we've talked about how important dads are in shaping our influence and experience. And I think in part we count on moms to be there. And like that's like a pretty predictable thing, but we're looking for like, how does dad react? What is dad doing? How does dad engage? Yeah. What does it mean when dad does, you know, X, Y, or Z?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, dads, they got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. The next one, how often like did you think your parents were sexual?
Like I remember wondering, but never knowing.
Okay.
And then like I remember as I got older.
And what age do you remember wondering? Like
probably
ballpark?
Puberty, maybe 12.
Okay.
Wondering like when all those pieces were really coming together and just thinking like, okay, wait, when, how often do they?
Yeah.
And then like I get like media teaching, right? That like, oh wait, sex seems like something that people want consistently and regularly and often. But do my parents? I don't know. And like, that seems strange. And I remember thinking that would be strange if they had sex regularly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you remember?
Honestly, like some of the thoughts I have, I'm like, I laugh at now, you know, like I remember being a teenager and I had these aunt and uncle who had some struggles with fertility, you know, and I was like, man, that would be awesome. Cause then you'd have to have sex every day. Like then you just have to like, and like they probably have sex so much more because they have to keep trying
to,
you know? And I was like, man, I hope that happens to me. Like so sad, you know, sad. Like that obviously like helps understand like my perception of like sex was just for
fulfillment,
procreation.
Yeah. Like
this wasn't,
I see what you mean.
This wasn't just for like a connect thing.
But it also seemed like it also was like a physical.
Yeah, mainly physical
feeling,
release.
Like a physical release. Totally. Like, oh, I get that. I want that.
I remember being a teenager and like pretty aware of sex. And like my dad found my mom's scriptures that she had lost for like a year and a half in a move, you know, and I must have been like 14. And my mom's like, oh, I'm so happy you found them. This is actually a time I remember my mom physically engaging with my dad.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And then she's like, well, like, what can I give you? And he's like, well, I want to have sex. And then she's like, okay. And then I remember like 20 minutes later, we're in the garage with my dad and I'm like, are you gonna have another kid?
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
And my dad was like, what? And I was like, I heard you say that you and mom are gonna have sex. Like, are you guys gonna have another kid? And he was like, oh, no, like, you know, but like 14 and my perception is sex is just procreative.
Yeah.
You know, especially like we've talked about this a little bit before, like a lot of my sex education was animals.
Right.
And most of like their sex is all
procreative. Yeah.
You know? And so like I really had this perception that sex was just for procreation. So I thought my parents had sex like, I don't know, like there's 5 kids. Like I was thinking like 5-6 times. Like that's how many times my parents have had sex. And so I did not really think they were sexual. Yeah.
Even at 14.
Yeah. Even at 14 years old. Yeah.
And I think I also remember like seeing my mom's birth control pills. And so like things like that kind of clicking in like, oh, that must mean that they have sex. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't honestly like, Honestly, I have freaking no clue. Like if I had to guess for like a bunch of money, like the frequency of my parents' sexual life, I'm like, I would have like you may as well give me a random human. Like
No
I don't,
idea.
I have no idea.
Like, would you say more or less than once a week? You wouldn't be able to answer there.
Honestly, like my guess would be less just because eventually they got divorced, but like
Okay.
I have no freaking clue. Like honestly, I may as well, like you can give me like Amy and Joe, and I would I would have the same chance of being
Guessing.
accurate of how
Interesting.
frequent it was. Like as a kid, I had no concept.
Yeah, if I had to guess,
that.
I would probably say weekly
Interesting. Yeah.
for my parents.
And then how did your parents react to like you being physically intimate?
Like me being physically intimate with somebody that I was dating.
Yeah.
I remember like they didn't do a lot of guarding on me. And so I felt like they trusted me with physical intimacy decisions.
Yeah.
Like they didn't really put a lot of curfew restrictions or like who are you going to be with and are there going to be boys there? Like they were not really that concerned. I do remember them saying like, well, if you want to have sex with someone, like you're going to find a place and a time. Like our boundaries aren't going to stop that. We know that like you're going to have to decide and make choices about what you want. And so I felt like they were, to me, that's communicated like, we're okay with this and we understand that like you are going to be engaging physically.
Would you say your parents like thought it was good you were being physically intimate or felt like threatened by it? Like where do you think?
I don't think they felt threatened. I don't necessarily got this. I didn't ever get this idea that like, oh, we're excited for you to do this and have this or like to kiss somebody.
But it wasn't dangerous.
It wasn't dangerous. And I do remember my mom like sometimes asking like, well, do you like this guy? Or like, did you kiss him or something? You know, and I remember like never wanting to talk about it with her. But just her asking that made me think like, okay, she must be somewhat okay with it. And that was good. I felt like that was better for me than like, a parent coming across like guarded.
Totally.
And, like this is dangerous.
Yeah.
How about you? What was that like for you?
Oh man, I don't really remember. There was like weird. You have those one moments, you know, that stand out to you, you know. But like I remember that some of the parent boundaries were like there was no door on our like movie theater room.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so like it was kind of like semi-monitored, you know. But like I remember not being embarrassed to like be at a game or like a football game or something and like be physically intimate with my partner. Yeah, like kissing or whatever, right? Like I kind of was in relationships all through high school and like I don't remember my parents ever going like, "What are you doing?" You know?
Yeah,
like
questioning you or
or like making me feel dumb for being physically intimate. Like I don't think it was. Yeah. In fact, I remember my dad kind of having this attitude of like, it's really good for you. Like you should be kissing a lot of people, like get out there, be with a bunch of people, you know?
Oh yeah.
And I had some like, I don't like that. Like I want to just be kissing one human, you know? And so like, but I remember it being like a very positive, like, yeah, this is good for you. Like get out there, get engaged with it. This is an awesome phase of life.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know? I do remember my mom, like before prom, she was like, well, be safe. And she like told me about getting a condom, you know? And I was like, what? Like, I am not having sex. Like, what are you talking about? You know? And so, like, I remember being a little bit like, whoa.
Shocked.
To that, you know? But it did kind of give me this idea that, like, my mom thinks I'm having sex.
Like, she thinks I could be doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she hasn't, like, stopped me or talked to me about it or, like, made a point or something about it.
Yeah. Like, tried to stop it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, wow, what? And honestly, it, like, made me question, like, do they think I'm a bad kid?
Oh, yeah.
You know? Like, that actually, because, like, I had a perception that sex was bad.
Right.
You know? And so like I was like, uh-oh. You know, like does my mom think I'm bad? You know? But then honestly, like that took me like maybe, I don't know, 2 days to shake off and I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and then it was out of my head.
Yeah.
You know? But I would say overall they had a kind of positive reaction to it, you know? Which honestly is not what I hear the normal.
I would agree. Like I know like for me and my husband, when we were dating, his parents didn't ever leave us alone at their house. Like when we'd go and hang out, spend time over there and like, it didn't matter how late it got. One of them was there sitting with us, you know, and it was like, okay, I think we should go. Yeah.
This.
And it was not that way at my house. Like I remember my mom walking in on us making out and then like being like, oh, sorry. And like leaving, you know?
Yeah. And she was apologetic because it's like your moment.
Yeah. This like, this is private. I'm going to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I see a lot of the time of just like, especially dads, like again, we're back on dads again, but like the dad clench about physical intimacy.
Okay.
Where it's like, oh my gosh, my daughter is whatever. And it's like, almost like honestly, I have girls who talk to me about how they think that their worth to their dad fell as they were physically intimate.
Yeah.
And like that's not a rare thing that I hear about.
Yeah.
And like, man, does that break my freaking heart.
Yeah.
Like I really never want to send that message to my daughters.
That them being physically intimate in some way
is going to decrease their worth.
Decreases
in
their
my
worth.
head.
Yeah.
Like I want to continually send the message that like I'm pumped for you. Like one day you're going to feel these feelings and you're going to want to kiss someone. And that moment where you feel that connection that like, not only do you feel that way, but they feel that way about you too.
Yeah.
It's this amazing, like, I'm safe with you. I'm into you. You're into me. We're together moment. And like, I'm pumped for you to have one of those. Like they're the best.
That is so cool. I mean, like I think it's a common conversation, right, for dads to say to their daughters, like, oh, you can't, I don't want you to date until you're 21 and I don't want you to get married until you're 35. And like, again, we are communicating what we think sex is when we say that it's dangerous, that it decreases your worth, that you can't handle it, that
and
it's
a little
demeaning
bit of
to you.
Hiding.
Yeah, it's true.
That's like, don't talk to me about this. Because like sometimes dads are like, okay, I know you're doing this, but don't tell me. It's like, oh, like it's the exact opposite of what we want. Like
I don't want to know about your
because I freaking want to know
intimacy.
all of it.
Yeah.
Like if he touched you and you were pumped about it, I want to know.
Yeah.
If he touched you and you were like unsure, but then you're like, okay, then I want to know. Like, and I know I'm not going to get to.
Yeah.
But I want to.
But you want to.
You know, and I want to send that message that like, I want to be with you with this.
I love that. That's awesome. So like what else happened in your home with physical intimacy, like in terms of between siblings or like parents to siblings? You talked a little bit about like your dad and your sister, and there was like some physical intimacy expressions there.
I do remember that, like, especially like in church, like I remember like my dad loves to get his back scratched. And so he was always trying to fish for a back scratch, is the truth, for like from everybody.
I totally get him.
Like anybody. Yeah. Like he was fishing for a back scratch or a hand massage, like those are the things he wanted. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I remember my dad's hands is because he would be like, hey, and he'll plop his hand on my leg and just be like, where do you want me to sit so you can massage my hand? That's what he'll say. And it's like, but like, and then honestly, I would. And I remember like that touch was honestly, as much as it was like, I'm giving my dad a hand massage, like it still was this like connection between the two of us, and I have fond memories of my dad's hands. Like I just like when I think of my dad, I think of, I'm pretty sure it's his left hand, like that left cut fingers off. And that's like the main thing I think about when I think of him. Yeah. I don't really remember a lot of touch with my mom. Like I remember hugs for like big moments. Okay. But I don't really remember a lot of touch besides that. Like besides like this, like if I saw my mom hug a sibling, I would think, oh, this is a big moment. Like either someone's like upset or like they just accomplished something. Like I would think big moment. Okay. And then we would cuddle with our siblings who were prepubescent. Okay. So like for me, was the oldest, 11 years younger is my sister. And like for her to like lay on me, like I remember like dating my girlfriend and like she was laying on one side of my chest and my sister was laying on the other, Oh, okay. And I just like that was very, very normal. Normal. And okay. Yeah.
And your sister was prepubescent at the time.
Prepubescent. Yeah. Yeah. Like, and honestly, like I moved out of the home before she hit puberty. And so like that was really a pattern of our relationship. Yeah. My sister, who was like on the same puberty train as me, we're 3 years apart, but like women hit puberty first. Kind of we hit puberty together. There's some rough moments there because we're both hitting puberty at the same time. Yeah. But then we like really connected, and we would connect over talking and like come sometimes like side hugs and like I would like piggyback rides messing around at school, but not really like intimate touch, like very playful touch post puberty. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. What about you? Like, what do you remember about the home and like cuddling with siblings or like?
Like, I don't remember really cuddling much with my siblings. My older siblings were like 5 and 7 years older than me. Okay. And so like, I do think my sister probably was a little bit more affectionate with me. Like when she would like kind of take that caretaker role a little bit. And then like I had a younger sister that was 3 years younger than me, and her and I think it was mostly playful between us as siblings, I would say.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, how do your parents seem to respond now, like with physical intimacy with your partner? Like what are they like? What's the energy that they have?
I think that like my perception is like nothing shifts, right? Like us being intimate in some way, whether that's a kiss or like cuddling or like whatever that looks like now, they just treat it like it's normal. Like, they don't really respond.
Like it doesn't really like seem to shift anything.
No, it does.
It's just like, oh, that's like, it's almost so normal that they don't even notice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like, I don't know, like for me, like, oh, bummer. Okay. I gotta make that shut up. Is the truth during these. Honestly, like I think for me, like there is a little bit of hesitancy, and like I wonder if it's just because like of my own energy or my perception, but there is kind of this like, I don't know, I feel unsure. Like I feel like unsure of like, do they like this, or like am I making them uncomfortable? And it like gets in my own head, which now makes my physical intimacy like a little bit like awkward, which then makes it worse.
Oh, okay.
You know, like in my perception that they're going like, well, that was weird, you know? But there must be like some positives to it. Like I remember we first got married, and then like honestly, like within a month, we went on a vacation with their family, right? And they put us in a isolated room all by ourselves, and other people were kind of having to share, but they like gave us a room that was kind of away from everyone. And I went like, oh, like maybe they think it's fine. And my wife was like, yeah, it's totally fine. And I was like, and I was not like, honestly, that whole entire time having sex with her, my brain was a little bit like, okay, I hope this doesn't nothing, you know, like I was a little fearful. You know, and so I think.
But your wife felt okay about it.
My wife felt better
so
about
that
it than me.
Kind of speaks like what maybe her perception of that was maybe a little bit different from you.
Totally. I think it was. Like, I think she has more comfort. I think it's more comfortable around your own parents anyway, because it's like, I don't want to have conflict with someone who like I don't really know that well yet, and they're still making their decisions on if they like me or not.
What they think about me,
honestly, that goes forever. Like I still wonder, like, you know, and that's just kind of part of life. But like I remember being very hesitant about it. I think honestly, when I look back on it, as much as it might be her parents, I think a lot of it is like my perception of my parents, where like dad was the seeker, mom was the giver, and that like it was something she had to do for him, and it wasn't something she wanted, you know. And so as much as maybe that's true about my in-laws, like it was very true because of my parents had that perception. And so it almost like that felt a little bit that way.
Which is like exactly what we're talking about with this conversation, right? That the culture you experienced growing up is going to influence how you interact now and what your kids are going to experience as you navigate those things with your partner now.
And one thing that's like almost an advantage of divorced parents is now I see different cultures, right?
Okay.
Like I witnessed my parents' culture together, right? But like now I witness my mom's culture with her new husband. Right. And what touch means to them, and like how much it seems like she's seeking that touch and wants it and is like part of it. Right. And then I see my dad and with his new wife, and like what is their culture with touch, and like how do they use touch, and like they're kind of touching each other all the time, and it's like, okay, like, right. And so I now see a lot of cultures, which is I think a little bit freed me from just the culture of my parents,
right?
You know, and I think as we become culturally aware, I think we gain cultural power to kind of choose what we want,
right, and create what we are trying to create for our children, for our own experience, and that shifts over time. Like you're talking about your parents, what it was isn't what it is now for them.
Yeah. And that's kind of where this is going, right? Like the next place we're going is like, let's evaluate your own culture, right? Like what is the culture of touch in your home? Right. And is it celebrated? Is it like discouraged? Like where are you at with touch in your home?
Cool. Thanks for joining us for this discussion today. We hope it was valuable for you and your families. Our website, trueconnectionsrecovery.com, has a bunch of resources that you can access to get support from us.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways we're trying to help individuals, right? Whether it's through like individual recovery, like partner support, even like parental support, like how can I set my home up as a place for success?
Yep. We will be putting like technology management resources, other educational tools, or like workshops that might be up and coming in the area.
Just trying to provide ways for like families to feel supported, right? And so all of that you can find there on that website.
The more that this gets shared, and like as you talk about it with others that you know, like the discussions kind of flow, and we can all grow in this area together.
Yeah, we really succeed as a community.
Yep.
Thank you.